What happens when a calm conversation on live television suddenly turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments the studio has seen all season? Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The lights are bright in the studio, the familiar theme music fades, and the audience claps as the hosts of The View settle into their chairs around the table. Whoopi Goldberg leans forward with her usual relaxed posture, smiling at the audience. "All right, everybody," she says. "We've got a great guest today. Academy Award winner, producer, author. You know her from so many incredible roles. Please welcome Lupita Nyong'o." The audience erupts in applause as Lupita walks onto the stage, waving warmly. She hugs Whoopi, then moves down the table greeting the rest of the panel. Hi. So nice to be here," Lupita says, smiling as she takes her seat. Next to her, Sunny Hostin smiles politely but watches closely. Whoopi begins the conversation. "First of all, congratulations on everything you've been doing lately. I mean, it feels like you're everywhere." Lupita laughs lightly. "It does feel like that sometimes," she replies. "But I'm really grateful. I've been working on projects that matter to me." The audience claps again. Whoopi nods. And that's what we like to see. Not just entertainment, but purpose behind it. Sunny jumps in quickly. "And a lot of those projects are about representation and storytelling," Sunny says. "Which is something we talk about here all the time." Lupita nods. "Absolutely. Representation is important because stories shape how we see each other." At first, everything feels friendly, relaxed, the way these interviews usually go. Whoopi gestures toward Lupita. "You've always been vocal about that, whether it's film or activism." Lupita responds calmly. "Yes. I think when you have a platform, you have to think carefully about how you use it." Sunny leans forward slightly. "But some people think actors should stay out of social issues," Sunny says. The audience murmurs. Lupita smiles politely. "Well, I don't believe storytelling exists outside of society. Every story reflects something about the world." The audience claps again. Sunny nods, but doesn't look completely convinced. "True," she says. "But sometimes celebrities speak on things they don't fully understand. And people wonder if it becomes more about image than real impact." The studio grows slightly quieter. Whoopi glances toward Sunny, then back to Lupita. Lupita keeps her composure. "Well, I think anyone speaking on issues should take the time to learn and listen," she replies carefully. "That includes celebrities and everyone else." The audience murmurs in agreement. Sunny tilts her head slightly. "But do you think sometimes actors step into conversations that activists and scholars have been having for years?" Lupita pauses briefly. "I think those conversations are open to everyone," she says. "But it's important to approach them with humility." Whoopi nods approvingly. "Exactly," she says. "You gotta do your homework." The audience laughs softly. But Sunny continues. "Let me push back a little," she says. "Because sometimes when celebrities speak about representation, it sounds great, but the industry itself still benefits from inequality." A few audience members clap. Lupita listens attentively. "That's true," she acknowledges. "The industry does have systemic problems." Sunny leans forward more now. "So when actors celebrate progress, some critics say it's premature." The room grows noticeably more serious. Lupita takes a breath. "I don't think acknowledging progress means ignoring the work that still needs to be done." Sunny responds quickly. "But people watching at home might hear that and think everything is improving faster than it actually is." Whoopi raises a hand slightly. "All right, hold on," she says with a small smile. "We're getting into the heavy stuff early today." The audience laughs, easing the tension slightly. But Sunny continues, her tone sharper now. "I'm just asking the question people are asking online." Lupita nods slowly. "And I'm happy to answer," she says. The audience quiets, sensing the conversation shifting. Lupita continues. "I think progress and accountability can exist at the same time." Sunny crosses her arms lightly on the table. "But when actors speak about activism, there's also the question of lived experience." The audience murmurs again. Lupita looks directly at Sunny. "I agree with that," she says. Sunny responds quickly. "But you've said before that Hollywood still struggles with diversity. Yet many people would say your career is proof that things are changing." Lupita smiles politely. "My career is one example," she says. "But one example doesn't represent an entire system." The audience claps loudly. Sunny pauses, then raises her eyebrows slightly. But some viewers feel that message can come across as ungrateful. The audience reacts immediately. a mix of surprised gasps and murmurs. Whoopi glances toward Sunny. Okay now, she says carefully. Lupita remains calm but clearly surprised. Ungrateful, she repeats. Sunny nods. I'm just repeating what people say. The studio grows quiet. Lupita sits back slightly in her chair. Well, she says slowly, I think gratitude and honesty are not opposites. The audience applauds loudly. Sunny doesn't clap. She looks directly at Lupita. But when someone achieves incredible success in the system, people sometimes question criticisms of that same system. Whoopi interjects. Sunny. But Sunny keeps going. It's a fair question. Lupita's expression changes slightly, still calm, but more serious now. I've always believed success gives you more responsibility to speak honestly, she says. The audience claps again. Sunny nods but presses further. So you don't think there's a contradiction there? The tension at the table becomes visible now. Even the audience senses it. Lupita leans forward. No, she says firmly. Sunny responds quickly. Some would argue there is. Whoopi lifts her hands. Okay, we're going to take a breath here, she says. The audience laughs nervously. But Lupita speaks again before the moment moves on. If I may, she says calmly. Whoopi nods. Go ahead. Lupita looks toward Sunny. I think criticizing a system while benefiting from it is actually necessary if you want that system to improve. The audience erupts into applause. Sunny remains quiet, watching her. Then she responds. But criticism is easy, Sunny says. The room goes quiet again. What's harder, Sunny continues, is acknowledging when the system has actually opened doors. Lupita pauses for a moment before responding. I have acknowledged that, she says. Sunny shakes her head slightly. But sometimes it sounds like you're saying it's never enough. Now the tension is unmistakable. Whoopi glances between them. Lupita speaks carefully. For many people, it isn't enough yet. The audience claps again, louder this time. Sunny leans back in her chair. But the question is, who gets to decide that? The audience murmurs. Whoopi quietly mutters, oh boy. Lupita looks directly at Sunny. Everyone affected by it, she says. A few people in the audience stand and clap. Sunny smiles, but it's a tight smile. And that's where the debate begins. The atmosphere at the table is now noticeably tense. Whoopi taps the table lightly. Well, she says, half laughing. This got serious real quick. The audience laughs nervously again. But Sunny looks back toward Lupita. And we haven't even gotten to the real question yet. The audience murmurs again, sensing something bigger coming. Lupita raises an eyebrow slightly. What real question? Sunny folds her hands together on the table. The one people online have been asking about your recent comments on Hollywood. The audience reacts immediately. Whoopi looks concerned. All right, she says slowly. Sunny turns fully toward Lupita. Because some critics say those comments crossed a line. The audience gasps softly. Lupita looks genuinely surprised. Crossed a line? Sunny nods. And I think we should talk about that. The studio falls into a tense silence as the conversation clearly begins to shift into something far more confrontational than anyone expected. The silence hangs over the table for a moment after Sunny says it. A few audience members shift in their seats. Some whisper to each other. The tension in the room is no longer subtle. Whoopi Goldberg leans forward slightly, glancing between the two women. All right, she says carefully, trying to keep the energy balanced. Let's slow down just a little bit. But Sunny Hostin continues, her eyes still on Lupita Nyong'o. Because when those comments started trending, Sunny says, people had a lot to say about them. Lupita tilts her head slightly, calm but clearly attentive. I'm always open to conversation, she says. So what specifically are you referring to? Sunny nods. Well, you spoke recently about how Hollywood still struggles with recognizing global talent, especially from outside the United States. The audience listens closely. You said the industry still decides which voices are marketable and which ones aren't, Sunny continues. Lupita nods slowly. Yes, I said that. Sunny raises her eyebrows slightly. And some critics took that as you dismissing the opportunities you've had. The audience murmurs again. Lupita lets out a small breath. I don't think acknowledging systemic issues dismisses opportunity, she replies. Sunny responds immediately. But you've had some of the biggest opportunities an actor can have. The audience claps softly. Sunny gestures toward Lupita. You won an Oscar. You've been in major global films. Millions of people admire your work. Lupita smiles politely. And I'm incredibly grateful for all of that. Sunny nods but presses further. Then why frame the system as something that still excludes voices? Lupita answers without hesitation. Because it does. A louder reaction from the audience now, a mix of applause and murmurs. Whoopi leans back slightly, letting the conversation play out. Sunny folds her hands together. But some people say that framing can discourage young actors who are trying to break into the industry. Lupita shakes her head gently. I think honesty encourages people more than pretending everything is perfect. A few people clap. Sunny's expression tightens slightly. But sometimes the message sounds like the progress isn't meaningful. Lupita turns toward her. Progress is meaningful, she says. But progress isn't the same as completion. The audience applauds again. Whoopi nods. That's a good way to put it, she says. Sunny glances toward Whoopi briefly, then back to Lupita. But let's talk about another part of that conversation, Sunny says. The room quiets again. You also said that global stories are often filtered through a Western lens. Lupita nods. Yes. Sunny leans forward. And that Hollywood sometimes decides which cultures are relatable to audiences. Correct, Lupita replies. Sunny pauses before speaking again. Some people online felt that was a criticism of audiences themselves. Lupita's eyebrows rise slightly. That wasn't my intention. Sunny gestures with one hand. But perception matters too. The audience murmurs again. Lupita sits forward in her chair. I was criticizing industry decision-making, not audiences. Sunny responds quickly. But when those comments circulate online, nuance gets lost. Whoopi chuckles softly. That's the internet, she says. The audience laughs lightly. But Sunny keeps going. And that's why some people pushed back. Lupita nods calmly. I'm aware. Sunny tilts her head. So how do you respond to those critics? Lupita pauses for a moment before answering. I think criticism is part of any public conversation, she says. Sunny nods. But do you think some of the criticism was fair? The audience quiets again. Lupita considers the question. Some of it was thoughtful, she says. Sunny looks slightly surprised. And some of it? Lupita smiles faintly. Less thoughtful. The audience laughs and claps. Sunny smiles briefly, but the tension remains. Let me ask you something directly, Sunny says. Sure, Lupita replies. Sunny looks straight at her. Do you believe Hollywood still favors certain voices over others? Yes, Lupita answers immediately. The audience reacts again. Sunny presses further. Even now? Yes, Lupita repeats. Sunny raises her eyebrows again. Despite all the changes we've seen in recent years? Lupita nods. Change is happening, she says. But systems don't transform overnight. Whoopi snaps her fingers lightly. That's true, she says. Sunny glances toward Whoopi again. But some people argue that constant criticism of the industry can make collaboration harder. Lupita looks puzzled. How so? Sunny explains. If creators feel like the industry is always being framed negatively, they may become defensive instead of open. The audience murmurs thoughtfully. Lupita nods slowly. I understand that concern, she says. Sunny waits. But silence doesn't create improvement, Lupita continues. The audience applauds again. Sunny sighs lightly. But there's also a balance between critique and appreciation. Lupita responds calmly. I agree. Sunny pauses. But some critics say your recent interviews leaned more toward critique. Lupita smiles politely. Interviews often highlight specific topics, she says. Sunny leans back slightly. So you don't regret those comments? No, Lupita says calmly. The audience claps again. Sunny taps the table lightly with her fingers. I think what surprised people, she says, was the tone. Lupita raises an eyebrow. The tone? Sunny nods. It sounded frustrated. The audience murmurs. Lupita thinks for a moment. I think honesty can sometimes sound like frustration. A few audience members clap. Sunny responds quickly. But frustration can also be misinterpreted. Lupita nods. That's true. Whoopi jumps in again. Look, people get passionate about the things they care about, she says. The audience claps. Sunny nods slightly but continues. But when you're a public figure, every word carries weight. Lupita agrees. Yes, it does. Sunny pauses. And that's why some viewers wondered whether your comments were aimed at specific people in the industry. The room grows quieter again. Lupita looks surprised. No, she says firmly. Sunny tilts her head. Not at all. No. Sunny studies her expression for a moment. Because a few producers actually responded online. The audience reacts immediately. Wait, really? Someone shouts from the crowd. Whoopi raises her eyebrows. Oh boy, she mutters. Sunny nods. Yes. She looks back at Lupita. And they felt the comments were unfair. Lupita remains composed. I wasn't speaking about individuals. Sunny replies quickly. But individuals make up the system. The audience murmurs again. Lupita nods. That's true. Sunny continues. So when the system is criticized, some people feel personally criticized. Lupita shrugs slightly. I can't control how people interpret broad statements. A ripple of applause moves through the audience. Sunny leans forward again. But do you understand why some might feel targeted? Lupita thinks for a moment. I understand the reaction, she says. Sunny nods. But the conversation about equity is bigger than individual feelings. The audience claps loudly again. Whoopi smiles slightly. That's the conversation right there. Sunny looks thoughtful but not fully convinced. And yet, she says slowly, some viewers felt your comments suggested that success in Hollywood still requires compromising cultural authenticity. The audience reacts again. Lupita sits up straighter. I said that authenticity is sometimes discouraged, she clarifies. Sunny responds immediately. And that's where the debate really exploded online. The room grows quiet again. Sunny folds her hands together. Because some people said that statement unfairly painted the entire industry. Lupita responds calmly. I was speaking from personal observations. Sunny tilts her head again. But personal experiences don't always reflect the full picture. Lupita nods. That's true. Sunny presses further. Then do you think your comments might have unintentionally generalized the issue? The audience watches closely. Lupita pauses. I think any short quote can sound like a generalization without context. Sunny nods slowly. That's fair. For a moment, the tension seems like it might ease. But Sunny then says something that immediately tightens the atmosphere again. However, she continues, there was another part of that interview people haven't stopped talking about. The audience murmurs loudly. Whoopi looks over at her. What part? Sunny turns back to Lupita. The moment where you said that some executives still treat international actors as temporary trends. The audience gasps. Lupita's expression becomes more serious. Yes, she says quietly. Sunny nods. And that's the comment that really upset some people. The room grows tense again. Sunny looks directly at her. Because some executives say that claim simply isn't true anymore. A pause fills the studio. Lupita looks back at Sunny calmly. Well, she says slowly, I guess that depends on who you ask. For a moment after Lupita says that, the studio is completely quiet. Not the casual quiet of a normal interview. The kind where people are listening politely. This is the kind where everyone can feel the tension sitting at the table. A few audience members clap hesitantly. Whoopi Goldberg glances out toward the crowd, and then back at the panel. Well, she says slowly, that's a strong answer. Some people laugh nervously. Sunny Hostin nods slightly, her expression serious. I appreciate the honesty, she says. But let's unpack that a little. She turns fully toward Lupita Nyong'o. Because when you say executives treat international actors like temporary trends, that's a serious accusation. The audience murmurs again. Lupita remains calm. It's not an accusation, she says. It's an observation. Sunny responds quickly. But that observation suggests something systemic. Yes, Lupita says plainly. The audience reacts again, louder this time. Whoopi lifts her hands slightly. All right, folks, she says with a smile. Let's keep it respectful. A few people chuckle. Sunny leans forward again. Let me ask you something directly, she says. Do you believe the industry is still uncomfortable with global voices having long-term influence? Lupita nods without hesitation. In some cases, yes. Sunny raises her eyebrows. Even after the success of so many international actors? Lupita answers calmly. Success doesn't erase underlying attitudes. The audience claps. Sunny taps the table lightly. But if audiences are embracing those actors, doesn't that suggest the industry is evolving? Lupita nods slightly. Audience support has always pushed the industry forward. Whoopi snaps her fingers. That's true. But Sunny continues. So then why frame it as resistance from executives? Lupita sits forward a little. Because sometimes the audience is ready before the system is. A wave of applause spreads through the audience. Sunny pauses, looking thoughtful. But critics online said something interesting about that, she says. The audience quiets again. They said your comments made it sound like success stories are exceptions rather than progress. Lupita shakes her head gently. I never said they were exceptions. Sunny gestures toward her. But that's how some people interpreted it. Lupita responds calmly. Interpretation is subjective. A few audience members clap and laugh softly. Sunny nods slowly. But perception shapes public conversation. Lupita agrees. That's true. Whoopi glances between them. Look, this is what happens when complicated topics get boiled down to sound bites, she says. The audience claps. Sunny nods. And that's exactly why we're having this conversation, she says. She turns back toward Lupita. Because I think viewers want clarity. Lupita listens carefully. Sunny continues. So let me ask it in a simpler way. The room becomes quiet again. Do you believe Hollywood still struggles to fully embrace international talent as equals? Lupita pauses briefly before answering. Yes. The audience erupts into a mix of applause and murmurs. Sunny exhales slowly. That's a powerful statement. Lupita nods. It's an honest one. Sunny folds her hands together. But some industry leaders would strongly disagree. Lupita smiles faintly. That's their perspective. Sunny responds immediately. And they would say the industry has made enormous strides in the past decade. Lupita nods again. I agree that it has. Sunny tilts her head slightly. But progress doesn't mean the conversation is finished. The audience applauds loudly. Whoopi nods approvingly. That's fair. Sunny sits back for a moment, considering her next words. Then she says something that shifts the tone again. But let's talk about something else that came up in the online reaction. The audience murmurs immediately. Whoopi looks toward her. Here we go. Sunny glances down briefly at her notes. A few commentators said your comments came across as dismissive of the opportunities created by American filmmakers. The audience reacts with surprised murmurs. Lupita looks genuinely puzzled. Dismissive. Sunny nods. Yes. She continues. They argued that Hollywood has given international actors a platform they might not have had otherwise. Lupita responds calmly. And I've always acknowledged that. Sunny nods. But they say acknowledgement and appreciation are not always the same thing. The audience murmurs again. Whoopi looks slightly concerned now. Sunny. But Sunny keeps speaking. I'm just presenting the criticism, she says. Lupita takes a breath before responding. I appreciate the opportunities I've had, she says clearly. Sunny waits. But appreciation doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. The audience claps loudly. Sunny nods slowly. That's fair. But she adds quickly. However, some people say those conversations should happen privately rather than publicly. The room becomes quiet again. Lupita raises an eyebrow slightly. Why privately? Sunny answers. Because public criticism can damage the industry's reputation. The audience reacts immediately, a mixture of laughter and groans. Whoopi chuckles. Well, industries survive criticism. The audience applauds. Lupita nods. I believe transparency strengthens institutions, not weakens them. More applause fills the studio. Sunny listens carefully. But transparency can also create tension, she says. Lupita smiles slightly. Growth often comes from tension. The audience cheers and claps. Whoopi laughs. She's not wrong. Sunny smiles briefly but continues. Let me play devil's advocate for a moment. The audience murmurs again. If the industry is improving, constantly emphasizing its flaws might overshadow its achievements. Lupita nods thoughtfully. That's a valid concern. Sunny raises her eyebrows slightly. So you see that perspective? Yes, Lupita says. Sunny waits. But, Lupita continues, I don't believe celebrating achievements and addressing flaws are mutually exclusive. The audience claps again. Sunny taps the table lightly. I think some people would say balance is important. Lupita nods. I agree. Sunny leans forward again. But critics online said the tone of your interview didn't feel balanced. The audience murmurs once more. Lupita looks directly at her. Tone is subjective. Sunny responds. But public reaction suggests many people heard it the same way. Whoopi raises a finger. Public reaction online isn't always the most reliable measure. The audience laughs loudly. Sunny smiles briefly. That's true. But then she turns serious again. Still, those reactions exist. Lupita nods. I understand that. Sunny pauses. And that's why some viewers wondered if your comments reflected frustration with the industry. The room grows quiet again. Lupita thinks for a moment. I wouldn't call it frustration, she says. Sunny waits. I would call it urgency. The audience claps loudly again. Whoopi nods. That's a good word. Sunny looks thoughtful. Urgency about what exactly? Lupita answers clearly, making sure progress continues. Sunny nods slowly. But some people felt the urgency sounded like criticism directed at Hollywood specifically. Lupita shrugs lightly. Well, the conversation was about Hollywood. The audience laughs and applauds. Sunny smiles briefly, but then asks a more pointed question. Do you think the industry sometimes resists hearing criticism from people who have succeeded within it? The room becomes very quiet. Lupita pauses before answering. Yes. The audience reacts immediately. Sunny tilts her head. Why do you think that is? Lupita answers calmly. Because criticism can feel personal. Sunny nods. That's true. Lupita continues. But constructive criticism isn't about tearing something down. It's about helping it improve. The audience claps again. Whoopi smiles. That's the goal. Sunny sits back slightly. But some executives responded online saying your comments were unfair. Lupita nods. I saw some of those responses. Sunny looks curious. How did you feel about them? Lupita smiles faintly. I think disagreement is healthy. The audience laughs lightly. Sunny nods. But one producer said something that got a lot of attention. The audience leans in. Whoopi glances at her again. Oh boy. Sunny looks at Lupita. He said actors should focus on acting instead of criticizing the industry that supports them. The audience gasps loudly. Several people shake their heads. Whoopi raises her eyebrows. Wow. Sunny turns fully toward Lupita. And I think a lot of viewers want to hear your response to that. The room becomes completely silent. Lupita sits up straighter in her chair. She looks calm, but her voice is firmer than before when she speaks. Well, she says slowly, I strongly disagree with that idea. The moment Lupita Nyong'o says that, the studio reacts instantly. A wave of applause rolls through the audience, mixed with a few surprised murmurs. Some people nod, others lean forward, clearly sensing that the conversation has reached its most intense point. Whoopi Goldberg raises her eyebrows and glances toward the crowd. All right, she says with a half smile. People got feelings today. A few audience members laugh, but the tension at the table is still there. Across from Lupita, Sunny Hostin folds her hands together and watches her closely. So tell us why, Sunny says. Why do you disagree with that idea? Lupita doesn't hesitate. Because artists don't exist in a vacuum, she replies calmly. The audience claps again. She continues. Actors are storytellers, and stories reflect society. If you're telling stories about the world, you can't pretend the world's issues don't exist. More applause spreads through the room. Sunny nods slowly. But some executives argue that constant criticism can make collaboration harder, she says. Lupita looks at her. I believe honest conversation actually strengthens collaboration. The audience reacts with loud clapping. Whoopi leans back in her chair, smiling slightly. That's how grown folks handle things, she says. The audience laughs. Sunny tilts her head. But let me ask something that viewers online have been debating. The audience quiets again. If actors speak out about industry problems, do they also have a responsibility to acknowledge how much the industry has supported them? Lupita nods immediately. Yes. Sunny raises her eyebrows slightly. So you agree with that? Of course, Lupita says. And I do acknowledge it. She pauses briefly before continuing. But acknowledging opportunity shouldn't require silence about challenges. The audience claps loudly again. Sunny leans forward. Some people think it does. Lupita smiles faintly. Well, I don't. The audience laughs and applauds. For a moment, the tension eases slightly. Whoopi glances toward Sunny. You gotta admit, she says, she's being pretty clear. Sunny smiles briefly. Yes, she is. But the seriousness returns as Sunny asks another question. Do you think Hollywood is uncomfortable when actors speak about systemic issues? The room grows quiet again. Lupita thinks for a moment. Sometimes, she says. Sunny nods. Why? Because systemic issues suggest responsibility, Lupita answers. The audience murmurs thoughtfully. Whoopi nods slowly. That's true in any industry. Sunny continues. But do you think that responsibility belongs only to executives? Lupita shakes her head. No, it belongs to everyone involved. The audience claps again. Sunny pauses. Actors too? Yes, Lupita replies. Sunny nods. So what responsibility do actors have? Lupita answers carefully. To be thoughtful about the stories we tell. To ask questions. To listen to voices that aren't always heard. The audience applauds loudly. Sunny leans back slightly. That sounds reasonable, she says. Then she adds, but critics online said something interesting about this debate. The audience murmurs again. Sunny continues. They said the real issue isn't criticism, it's whether criticism is constructive. Lupita nods. I agree with that. Sunny looks curious. So do you think your comments were constructive? Yes, Lupita says calmly. Sunny waits. Because the goal wasn't to attack the industry, Lupita continues. The goal was to encourage reflection. The audience claps again. Whoopi gestures toward Lupita. That's what conversations are supposed to do. Sunny nods slowly. But reflection can feel uncomfortable. Lupita smiles slightly. Growth usually does. The audience laughs and applauds. Whoopi chuckles. That's the truth. Sunny pauses for a moment, then her tone softens slightly. She says, I think part of why this debate got so intense online is because people care deeply about the industry. Lupita nods. And they should. Sunny continues. Hollywood shapes culture around the world. Yes, Lupita agrees. Sunny looks toward the audience briefly before turning back. And that's why conversations like this matter. The audience applauds. For the first time since the debate began, the tension at the table starts to ease. Whoopi smiles. See, we made it through the storm. The audience laughs. Sunny smiles too. But she adds one final question. I want to ask you something personal. Lupita nods. Sure. Sunny asks carefully. Did you expect your comments to create this much debate? The audience quiets again. Lupita smiles thoughtfully. No, she admits. A ripple of laughter moves through the crowd. Sunny smiles. So you were surprised? A little, Lupita says. The audience laughs again. But conversations evolve, Lupita continues. And sometimes unexpected debates lead to meaningful dialogue. The audience applauds warmly. Whoopi nods. That's the good part of all this. Sunny smiles. I think viewers at home will have a lot to say about this conversation. The audience laughs knowingly. Whoopi looks toward the camera. Oh yeah, she says. The internet is already typing. The crowd bursts into laughter. Sunny turns back toward Lupita. Well, regardless of the debate, we appreciate you coming here and talking openly about it. Lupita smiles warmly. Thank you for having me. The audience applauds again. Whoopi stands slightly from her chair. And thank you for keeping it real. More applause fills the studio. As the conversation winds down, the atmosphere in the room shifts from tense to reflective. But the story doesn't end there. Because once the episode of The View finished airing, the conversation exploded online. Within minutes, clips from the discussion began circulating across social media platforms. Some viewers praised Lupita for speaking honestly about systemic issues in the entertainment industry. Others defended Sunny, saying she asked the tough questions many people were already thinking. Hashtags related to the debate began trending within hours. Fans posted clips of the most intense moments, especially the exchange where Lupita rejected the idea that actors should stay silent about industry problems. Comment sections filled quickly. Some viewers wrote that Lupita handled the situation with calm confidence. Others argued that Sunny was right to challenge her perspective. Even entertainment journalists began discussing the moment. Several media outlets described the exchange as one of the most candid conversations the show had aired in months. Backstage, according to people who were present, the atmosphere was far calmer than it appeared on television. Sources said Lupita and Sunny spoke briefly after the segment ended. The conversation was described as respectful and professional. No shouting, no drama, just two people acknowledging that difficult conversations can happen on live television. Meanwhile, producers at The View reportedly welcomed the discussion. Because moments like this are exactly what daytime talk shows are known for. Real debate, real perspectives, and real disagreement. By the end of the day, millions of viewers had watched the clip online. And people were still debating the same question that started the entire conversation. Is criticism of the industry a sign of frustration, or a sign that someone wants it to improve? That question remains open. And now we want to hear what you think. Was Lupita right to speak openly about the industry? Was Sunny right to challenge her perspective? Or do you think the truth lies somewhere in the middle? Share your opinion in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories, unforgettable on-air moments, and the biggest debates happening on television.